All right. Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate seeing everyone. Thank you so much for coming. And also thanks to everyone who is watching us at home right now. And I appreciate all of you, for taking some time out to be with us today. I have to turn off my phone and so on, so. It's always embarrassing when you're the one giving the Dharma talk and the phone that is ringing is yours. So this has happened. So in any case, good morning and thanks again. I am substitute teaching today for Lama Tom. He will be here soon. Everything's fine. He just had another engagement that he had to be home for. But he sends his greetings and that he'll be back soon. And so I look forward to seeing him also. So thanks to him for giving me the opportunity to finish the talk I started last week. He said, oh, I hate to give you a Dharma talk to do suddenly. And I said, oh, it's okay, because I actually started a Dharma talk last week and I didn't finish it. So this gives me the opportunity to finish the talk I started last week. And so in a way, it all works out, right? So before we begin, it's customary to recite a prayer at the beginning of our activities. And this particular prayer is the prayer of refuge. It's how we dedicate our time. It's how we make a verbal dedication of our time to all sentient beings. Because from the Buddhist point of view, helping others is our main practice, is our main spiritual practice, is being of service to others and helping others. That's our main way of practicing our spirituality, is helping others. And so when we start any activity, if we can remember that our purpose is to help other beings, any activity can become a spiritual activity. And I asked my teacher one time, I said, oh, so if I remember this before I wash dishes, my washing of dishes will be a spiritual activity? And he said, yes. So this inspired me to be able to do this type of intentional dedication at the beginning of activities here. And so we tend to begin our teaching activities with this particular prayer, affirming our confidence in the Buddha as our teacher, his teaching as the path, and his community is our community. So that's what we're doing. And we'll recite this 2 times in English so we can absorb the meaning. And then I'll chant it 1 time in Tibetan so we can get a flavor of the language it was written in, okay? So it starts with the words, in the Buddha. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. Okay, now we'll recite it once in Tibetan. O sanje chudan soji chonam la jang chu pardu dani kyap suchi daji jin soji bei sunam ki Drola Pinchir Sanjay Druparsho. Okay, thanks very much. You can set that aside for now. And I'll say a short prayer of my own, and then we'll begin. O Palden Sawe Lama Rinpoche Tagi Chiwar Pede Den Shala Kadrin Jembo Goneche Sonte, Kusum Tugging a Drup Sal to so. Okay, thanks. All right. It's once again, thanks for being here this morning. Last week, the topic that I started last week is the one I'm going to pick up with and continue with today. Many of you are aware that you don't have to be Buddhist to have Buddhist ideas. And in fact, there are many philosophies that exist in this world today that are not labeled Buddhist, but they carry Buddhist ideas. And one of these is that for anybody who is familiar with the 12 steps of recovery that were written down in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And last week I shared the story about how my dad, who had 26 years sobriety when he passed away at the age of 91, often would give me the sayings that he would learn from his buddies in Alcoholics Anonymous. And some of his sayings were actually quite Buddhist, even though it was founded by Christians, you know. The 12-step programs were founded by Christians, and they refer to the God of the Bible and Jesus and things like this. And so forth. But still, their slogans make so much sense, and they are in harmony with Buddhist ideas. And so that's where we started last week, me telling the story about my father and the sayings he would share with me that still inform my spiritual life today. So anyway, even though I'm Buddhist, I like these slogans, and I think they can be used to teach Buddhist ideas. And so there are lots of slogans that you may already have heard in your life, like easy does it, meaning take things gradually and slowly. Don't try to be forceful, and so on. Don't try to force a change. Let things proceed gradually and go easily. Because if we put too much pressure on ourselves or too much pressure on the situation, sometimes things can explode if there's too much pressure. So we have to, easy does it. We have to do it easily. Then another one that he gave me was it goes like this: first things first. That's another slogan that he used, and what I use the slogan to do is to help me when I don't know what to do. Maybe you've experienced this. You have like 3 or 4 different things you could do in this situation. Like a situation comes up and you got 1, 2, 3, 4 maybe ideas about what can I do? What should I do? And the slogan really means first things first. So first, the first thing you do has to be the most important thing of those 4, which is the most important. So then you do that. And then you do the next most important thing, and you do the next most important thing. And that brings in another recovery slogan, which is, to pull yourself together, so to speak, and do the next right thing. Do the next right thing. I love the whole idea of there being things that you can do that are helpful to you and helpful to others, because that's really what the next right thing is. It's something that helps you and helps others. So all of these sayings stick in your memory very easily because they're short, and they can help you when you are confused about what to do. I like slogans for that reason, because they can kind of help give you something to hold on to. They're short, they're easy. You can make a TikTok on each one. Easy, just simple. And then you can look at that every day. So in any case, this was how I started last week. And then I gave the slogan that I was going to work on and to expand on. And it was a really unusual slogan in that it had two parts. Don't, it had a don't and a do. I love English, don't you? There's a whole thing called do's and don'ts. Things you should do and things you should not do. Do's and don'ts. So this has a do and it has a don't. So the don't is the first one and the do is the second one. The don't is, he said, my dad quoted this, he said, don't live in the problem. Don't live in the problem. Live, is the second one, live in the answer. And by the word live, I think it means don't think about and dwell and worry about something. Don't dwell in the problem, but dwell or live in the answer. And so last week, and I feel it's necessary to repeat one more thing from last week, which is the Buddha's Four Noble Truths. Again, I look forward to making the TikTok video on this. You know, the four truths known by the noble, right? This is when the Buddha got enlightened. For many days, he did not teach at all because he didn't know what to say. He said, what I have experienced inside myself is so powerful, but I don't have the words for it. I don't know what to say about it. So he chose to say nothing. Rather than to say anything, he just said nothing. Well, finally, he was asked to teach. And he spoke about these four truths. These are the four things he came to know as being true from his meditation. First, suffering is part of our life. That's the first truth. Suffering is part of life. Now, you might think, well, that's kind of silly. Of course, suffering is part of life. I have it every day. Sometimes I get a headache, and that's suffering. Sometimes the boss gives me a headache, not my boss. But sometimes sometimes people give me a problem, or sometimes my own behavior gives me a problem, and I suffer because of that, right? So yeah, suffering's part of life, but the thing about it is that we sometimes don't know that suffering is part of our life. And we treat it like a misdelivered package from the post office. Like, oh, you delivered me some suffering. I didn't want that. I didn't order that. I didn't ask for this. It's on my doorstep, this suffering. I didn't order this. Here, take it back. You know, that's how we treat suffering, right? Even worse, sometimes we say, oh, here, neighbor, let me give you my suffering, please. You don't mind, do you? You know, so the way we treat our experience of suffering can be very unhelpful. In other words, our response to suffering can be very unhelpful. We might live in denial of our suffering, or we might try to give our suffering to somebody else. Maybe that'll help. But it never does. Somehow now they're mad. I gave them my suffering and now I feel better, but they feel horrible. And now they're mad at me because I gave them you get the picture. So it's inevitable, right? So that's why the first noble truth is coming to know that suffering is part of life so that we are better equipped to handle it when it arrives and we don't immediately try to hand it to the neighbor or do something else. So that's the first of the noble truths. Suffering's part of life, and we have to recognize that. Second of the noble truths is that suffering has a cause, and the cause is not external. The cause of suffering is not the boss. The cause of suffering is not the family. The cause of suffering is not, society, the world. The cause of suffering is our reaction. Our reaction to the things that happen. That's where the suffering comes from inside. And so the idea is that it's our bad habits of reaction. When people say things to us, then we get angry. Or if people don't give us something we think we deserve, we get angry. Or we want something so badly that we hurt somebody else to get it. We climb over somebody to get what we want. And so the cause of suffering is sometimes just our wanting. And that's what the Buddha said. The cause of suffering is our... He used a word that really implies clinging and fixation, but some people use the word desire, which is okay. Like desire is the cause of suffering. Like, I want happiness for myself. I don't care if you, other person, I don't care if you get happiness, I want mine. If my happiness means you have to suffer, sorry. And that's the cause of suffering, is our clinging to the idea of wanting to be happy at all costs. So now we have a problem. We have suffering and we have a cause. Now what? Thank goodness the Buddha kept teaching, because if he had just stopped there, we would be in trouble. We would have suffering and the cause, but no solution. But he kept teaching. So then he taught the third noble truth and the fourth. Third noble truth is just logic. Because there is a cause to suffering, there's a solution. It can be solved. Suffering can be solved because it has a solution. Because it has a cause, it has a solution. And of course, to simply say it very simply, if clinging and holding on so tight is why things hurt so much, as was what one Buddhist teacher said. She said, if something is hurting me so much, it's because I'm holding on to it so tight. That's why the pain is there. So naturally, that would mean that the solution is letting go. Letting go. But you can't say that to somebody who's suffering. You can't go up to somebody who's really suffering and say, oh, just let that go. That's ridiculous, right? We have to give them a method. We have to give them a way to make it change. To change it, we have to give them a technique, a method. And so that's why he taught the fourth noble truth, which was the path that leads to the end of suffering, that leads to the end of clinging and fixation. And so this Eightfold Noble Path, which is symbolized by the 8 beams in our ceiling, the 4 Noble Truths are symbolized by the 4 pillars in the shrine room. The Eightfold Noble Path is most easily spoken about by making 4 statements. The Buddha said, do no harm. Do no harm whatsoever. Do no harm. Second, practice virtue. Practice as much virtue as you can. Third, tame your mind. Tame your mind. And the last one is, this is the teaching of the Buddha, meaning there's no other. You can stop looking. Here it is. So to take that last one away, because it's a summary. So do no harm, practice virtue, tame your mind. So if anybody wants to, asks you, well, how do Buddhists practice? What is Buddhist spirituality? What is Buddhist practice? It's doing no harm, practicing virtue, and taming your mind. Taming your mind means to meditate. Doing no harm means don't hurt yourself, don't hurt others. Practice virtue means to take care, good care of yourself and to benefit others. And then taming the mind means to meditate so that you know what's going on in your mind and you can take action to do no harm and you can take action to benefit others. So you know the difference between benefit and harm. Now, I appreciate you sitting through that explanation again because it helps to set up the teaching on don't live in the problem, live in the answer. I've been practicing Tibetan Buddhism for a very long time. The first Tibetan Buddhists came to the United States in the 1960s. 1960, in the 1960s, the first Tibetan Buddhists came to America, so they haven't been here very long. Whereas the Chinese Buddhists, Japanese Buddhists, Korean Buddhists, they've all been here a lot longer. Chinese Buddhists started coming in the 1800s because Chinese people helped to build a railroad. Immigrants have always been important to this country. Immigrants have always been important. And so Buddhism came with them. After World War II, Japanese people brought their Dharma here. The oldest Buddhist temple in Ohio was established in 1947 by a Japanese woman who married an American soldier at the end of World War II and came to Cleveland and created the oldest Buddhist temple in Ohio. Pretty amazing, right? So when I first met the Tibetans, they didn't understand much English, and I still don't understand any Tibetan. But they gave some really amazing teachings. It's almost like they knew what our problems were. When Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, the founder of the center, started teaching, he said, well, here in America, he said, you have a lot of technological advancement. You've got cars, you've got airplanes, you've got computers, you have everything. But what you don't have, we can help you with. We Tibetans who, lived on farms, we were sheep herders and yak herders, We lived with animals, we were farmers. But we have something we can give you, even though you're technologically much more advanced than us. And that is, we can teach you how to find peace of mind. He said, you have all this technology, he said, but you don't have peace of mind. He said, we can help you with that. So it was that the Tibetans really understood us. In fact, one of the other Tibetans I met, Lama Ganga, he said, we have an interesting relationship with our problems, he said. And I'm listening. Yes, tell me more. Tell me more. What is our interesting relationship with our problems? And he said, we love our problems. We love them. I was so surprised. Why would he say we love our problems? Because I don't like my problems. He said, we like them sometimes so much that we don't want to solve them. How can he be so perceptive? From time to time, maybe you have experienced this. You meet someone and they've got a problem and you try to help them. And every time you try to help them, they say, oh no, that won't work. And then you try another idea. Oh, that won't work either. Or you give them a third idea. Well, that won't work either. So it's almost like they're so invested in their problem that they don't want to give it up, because then they'd have to do something else with their life. Did I say that part out loud? Yeah, it happens. That was me. I've been like that, myself, like that. Where my problems are so terrible, and I talk to everybody. Oh, have you heard about my problem? I have a very bad problem. Let me tell you more about my problem. Oh, yes, I've had this problem for a very long time. Would you like to hear more? Oh, you would like to hear more about my problem? Wonderful. Let me talk about it some more. And I know it sounds silly, and I'm repeating it to be silly, of course. But there have been times when I have really thought like that, and I have really done those things. And I'm sure it was not pleasant for the person I was talking to. They were not happy to hear about my problem. But I kept talking about it anyway because it made me happy. So now, after thinking about that, now I understood why the Lama said, we love our problems. Because they're ours. They belong to us. And they help us to orient ourselves to how we are in the world. And I do think sometimes we love them because we have a little fear in the back of our mind that without the problem, who would we be if we didn't have the problem? And so this unfortunate affection for problems and not being ready to solve them is a problem. And so that's what my dad meant when he said, don't live in the problem. Because when we are dwelling in or living in the problem, we're only concerned with the problem and we're not concerned with the solution. We're almost using the problem like a shield to protect us from being helped, and we're staying stuck I sometimes talk to Dharma friends, and they say, I'm really stuck in this problem. I can't get out of this problem, and I'm stuck. And so what I do is I back up a little bit rather than push. Because if you push, they'll back up into the problem, and they'll cover themselves up with their problem, and you won't be able to get through, right? So instead I say, oh, well, that's really interesting. Can we talk about that some more? And usually they will be interested in telling me about their problem. Sometimes 3 different ways, but they'll do it. And then I will try my best to feel relaxed, even if I don't know what to say. And I will say, well, what have you tried? Rather than suggesting things and having them say, that won't work, that won't work, that won't work, that won't work. Just have them tell me, what have you tried? Has it worked? And did it work a little bit? And that kind of thing. And that is what it means to live in the answer. Living in the answer means that we are not preoccupied with being stuck in the problem. We are occupied with how can I solve this problem? Living in the answer means we are willing to take the steps to solve the problem. We're willing to take the steps. And the Buddha, in his teachings, remember, what was the cause of suffering? Clinging, right? So if clinging to the problem is not solving it, then maybe we need to do the opposite of that thing. Do something different. And you can look this up online. There's a wonderful teaching by the Buddhist teacher, the American Buddhist teacher, Pema Chodron. And it's called Practice 3 Difficult Things. Practice 3 Difficult Things. And you can find it, it's on YouTube. Practice 3 difficult things. And she said, the first of the 3 things is, see what you do. See what you do. Second, do something different. 3, make that your path. Make that the way you live your life. See what you do something different, and make that the way you live your life. And you can, like I say, you can go online and see Pema. Pema spells her name P-E-M-A, and then second name is Chodron, and that's C-H-O, D as in David, R as in Richard, O, and then N as in Nancy. Pema Chodron. She's in her 80s now, and she's still teaching. She is this tiny little bird-like woman. I've met her. I think I've met her now 3 times. And the first time I met her, I was totally scared of her. Totally scared of her. Because she had at that time in her life, she had a very commanding presence and spoke with great authority. And I'm kind of like, I'm a little scared of that. It's like, that's not me. But then as the second and third time I met her, I saw that she was actually just becoming larger. And I don't know how else to explain that, except that she was like larger, more relaxed, more spacious, and more allowing. I don't know how to explain it, except to say that she wasn't, quite as strong with this. Anyway, so love you, Pema. So I'm a big fan. All 3 times I said the same thing to her at the beginning. I'm sorry, I'm a fangirl. I'm sorry, I'm a fangirl. So you have to let me fangirl all over you, So anyway, so it was like that. So see what you do means see how you react to things. See how you react. See the things that upset you, and see how you react when something upsets you. See how you react when something disappoints you. Just basically see how you react. And it's usually not healthy. It's something that's hurtful to yourself and maybe hurtful to others too. So it means self-honesty. We have to be honest with ourselves. We can't say, well, that person I yelled at, they deserved it. Although we love to say that, because that means we get to keep our problem, right? We don't have to give up the problem at that point. See what you do means to be self-honest and admit when we're wrong. Admit when we have been excessive and be able to be self-honest about who we are and where we've been. So that's the first part, see what you do. And what I tell people to do is like, if you want to work on a particular problem, just pick one or maximum 2 problems that you have and work on them one at a time. And that will help keep things small. Because if you try to tackle all of your problems at once, it's going to be a mess. It'll just be a mess because you won't know which end is up, and then you'll get a little discouraged because I don't know about you, but I got quite a few problems. And if I had them all in the same room with me at one time, I'd get a little bit intimidated, you know what I'm saying? So pick 1 or 2 of these problems, and then make a commitment to yourself that you're going to be aware of them and work on them. Like today, when you wake up in the morning, you say, today I'm going to tame and work with my impatience or my anger, or I'm going to try to tame my self-judgment, my judging, my perfectionism, my judging myself. I'm going to try to work on that. And then at the end of the day, you can say, how did I do? How did I do? Evaluate. How did I do? And so you can then recall your day and say, okay, in this situation, I did well. So I'm going to do more of that. I rejoice in how I handled it today. Or if you handled it badly, well, that didn't go well. So tomorrow I will do better. You see, so somebody said Buddhism is so great because it gives you credit for the good stuff you do. It doesn't just tell you, thou shalt not. You know? There are a lot of faith traditions that dwell a lot about how bad we are and telling us, don't do that, don't do that. But in Buddhism, they actually tell you what to do. You know, instead of lying, be kind with, be honest with generosity and that kind of stuff. It's really quite lovely. And you get to give yourself credit for the good things you do. Because a lot of times we don't give ourselves credit for the good things we do. And then we think we're not very good people. We come away with a bad opinion of ourselves. And it's not helpful. So anyway, that's the first part. See what you do. Second, do something different. Pema made this really interesting, gave this interesting alternative to reacting the way we usually react. She said, why don't you just like smile and laugh at yourself a little bit instead? Like, oh, isn't that funny? Look at me trying to control the world. You know, the idea, she said, whatever you choose to do, do something different. For some people, it'll be the opposite. Instead of getting angry, one would instead just breathe, and be with their breath. When I was a child, my grandmother used to say, when you get angry, before you open your mouth, this is what my grandmother said. She said, count to 10. And then say something, Because usually if you wait that long, it'll pass. It'll get a little less strong, right? So in Buddhism, we don't count to 10, but we do breathe and stay aware of our breath, which is great because we're meditators, and that's what we do when we meditate, right? Is that. So whether doing something different means that you laugh a little bit, you respond with a sense of humor, or that you respond with just being quiet and reflective and be with your breath. Whatever you choose to do differently, just do something other than the usual reaction. Even if the thing you do is turn around and walk away. Sometimes that's the best way to handle a bad reaction. If we have a bad reaction, if we have a tendency to speak sharp words or to feel depression and anger toward ourselves. We have to try to avoid all of those things. And so we have to be disciplined enough to recognize what's happening and then do something different. And then the last one is make that the way you live your life. Make that your path. Meaning you now have a new secret identity. You are a superhero. And your secret identity is that you're going to be a bodhisattva in training. You are no longer a lost and wandering human being. Lost and wandering human being. You're a person who's working on something. You're a person who has an occupation. You are a person who is trying to change. And that's your new definition. And I love this because my teacher said once you take on this practice of being a bodhisattva in training, he said, for one thing, he said, you're never going to be bored ever again in your life. He said, once you take on the bodhisattva commitment, you'll never, ever be bored, ever again. He said, because, he said, you will either be working on your own patterns, see what you do something different and make that the way you live your life. You'll either be doing that, or you'll be looking at everybody else and seeing their patterns and saying, oh, I think I can help this one, and trying to help other people. He said, you're never going to be bored ever again. And in my statement to that, adding to that statement is, not only will you never be bored, you will never feel that you are without purpose. I want to repeat that. You will never feel like you are without purpose in this world. So important. We all need to have reason and purpose. And being able to transform suffering into love, compassion, and wisdom, wow, it's an amazing path. Always looking for ways to adjust and change and adapt. One of the great teachers of the last century was Tralek Rinpoche. He passed away, unfortunately, very young. He was only in his 50s when he passed away. But he wrote an enormous number of books, and which means he gave an enormous number of teachings that were later turned into books. And in one of his books, he said, a lot of people think that the greatest gift of being a human being, you have a great gift as a human being if you're rich or smart or powerful or attractive, all of those things. People think, oh, that person must have good karma. They have all this wealth and power and good looks and all this. He said, none of that really is the best gift. He said, the best gift your karma can give you is adaptability, where you can adapt to whatever is going on. He said, now that's a superpower, to be able to adjust and to just keep moving one step before another step, never give up, never quit, just keep moving forward. Even if it's an inch at a time, one step forward and 2 steps back. It's like no matter what it is, you just keep moving, you never stop. His Holiness the Dalai Lama spoke that in one of his great wisdom sayings. They turned it into like a wall hanging and a poem. Just never give up, no matter what is going on around you. Just keep moving forward. Always work with love and lead with love and compassion. So, how do we live in the answer? Well, Pema Chodron's 3 difficult things. See what you do something different, and make that the way you live your life. I think that's a good option for living in the answer. Living in the answer. The answer is love, compassion, and wisdom. And the other thing you can do is by making a commitment every day to changing your unhelpful and unhealthy behavior. I do this every day. And sometimes I don't have time to really sit down with it. But what I'll do is I'll say this simple thing that I made up in my own mind. It's my restatement of the Bodhisattva commitment. It's like, may everything I do today benefit beings in some way. May everything I do today benefit beings in some way. Which means, even if I goof up even if I make a mistake, may that goof up or mistake help somebody. Even if I make a fool of myself and everybody's laughing at me, not with me, at me, you know, I think, well, may that be of benefit to others. So may everything I do today benefit beings in some way. Even if I make mistakes, even if I'm wrong, may even that be of benefit to somebody. And may we all become Buddhas. May everything I do today benefit beings in some way, and may we all become Buddhas. And so living in the answer doesn't mean we have to be smart right now, because we're only as smart as we are right now. We can't be any smarter than we are right now. I don't know if you've noticed this about your life. But you can't go back in the past and make yourself smarter. You know, some people say to me, oh, if only I knew what I know now. Well, you didn't. You know, you were where you were then, and you can't judge the old you badly. Be nice to the old you. They were young. They didn't know what was going on. They don't know what they know now. Be where you are now, and be kind and gentle to the you of the past. I mean, the you of the past, it wasn't totally mistaken because it put you here now. You're here now. The you of the past, say thank you. Me of the past, you know, that thank you, because it got me here. So if we can act like this toward ourselves, then this will help us to act like that toward others and be that gentle, open, and allowing person that I feel that Pema has become. Because that's how we can be. We can actually become a source of strength for other people. I was really lucky last night to be able to go to a play downtown. As you know, theater is my thing. I love theater. And for a 4-year period, a few years ago, I went to like every imaginable Broadway play in New York. It was an expensive hobby though, so I had to quit. But I'm seeing plays here, and there was one downtown. It's called Fat Ham, and it's about Hamlet, and in a wonderful dysfunctional family. And it was about how generational trauma stops. And it's genius, really. It's brilliant, and it's beautiful. And anyway, I think they have a pay whatever you want on Thursday nights. And so it's on for one more weekend. So you can go on Thursday nights. It's at the Rife Center. And it talks about changing. How do people change within their own lives and within a generation and within generations by stopping unhealthy behavior and instead implementing positive behavior. So I've talked way too much. I'm looking at my clock and saying, uh-oh, we have to, but this is a little bit about the topic. Don't live in the problem, live in the answer. And that's a choice we can make every minute of every day. Once we get the power of meditation, once we are able to meditate and notice our thoughts moment to moment, we can recognize the stories we're telling ourselves and hit the pause button so that we can make different choices. That's really the value of meditation. Because when you're meditating, what do? You're placing your attention on one thing, the breath coming in, the breath going out, the breath coming in, the breath going out. And then a thought comes up and it distracts you for just a moment. And then you notice that you're distracted. You say, thinking, you let it go, and then you gently return your attention to the breath. So you interrupted, you cut the continuity of that thought, which was taking you somewhere you didn't want to go anyhow. And then you learn how to do that with unhelpful thoughts. You can actually begin to drop them when you're not meditating. And it's a powerful skill. So anyway, okay, I better stop. But we have 2 question microphones. So if you have comments or if you have questions or curiosities, we can spend a few minutes doing that. So if you have, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's all right. Somebody, believe it or not, usually when somebody breaks the ice, we get more questions.
Right. So I got a problem. You want to hear it?
I love it.
I was thinking about that joke the whole time.
I'm loving that. That's great. Yeah.
What do we do in Buddhism, about procrastination? How we get past that? That's one of my biggest problems.
Yeah, I kind of get this because I've lived in that neighborhood for quite a few years, the procrastination neighborhood.
Yeah.
Because I think, here's what I think happens in procrastination. I think there are several different factors that are behind procrastination. So procrastination is just like the manifestation of like several different ways of thinking, right? Like one way of thinking is, I just don't wanna, it's just kind of like lazy. You're like, oh, I don't wanna make a decision about that now. Okay. And then another is like, I'm scared to make a decision. So it's a little laziness, a little fear,
Yeah.
And then I don't know if laziness and fear is the third thought, which is like being overwhelmed. There's just too many options. What did my buddy call this? It's like, hey, Drew, remember analysis paralysis? We talked about that. So, one of my Dharma friends and I talk about analysis paralysis, where we have so many choices that we can't really evaluate them. And so it's easier just to do nothing than to do something wrong, right? So what generally is taught, there's a whole chapter on this in one of the Tibetan books called The Jewel Ornament of Liberation, but the book is really long, so you don't want to have to read it just to get to that one place. So I'll brief it down, right? Give you the Reader's Digest version. He said the opposite, the thing that will help with procrastination is, number one, remembering impermanence. And this is not always something that people want to be reminded about, but our life is only so long, and that we only have so much time to get things accomplished in it. And so one solution for procrastination is to remember that time is short and that it's more important to make this change today. Okay, that's one, is to remember impermanence. But another one is to be satisfied with even just taking one step in the direction of it. And I'll tell you what I mean. For me, one of the things I used to have a real problem with was, when do I practice meditation during the day? When do I practice? And so sometimes I would pass by my meditation cushion and I started doing something different rather than looking at the cushion and thinking, I'm such a bad person, I'm not meditating. I would say, cushion, I love you. I wish I could be with you, but not today. But I'll get to you eventually. So I made a joke about it, essentially. But there was a little bit of truth in there. There's a little bit of truth, which is that I spoke my intention to do this thing that I was procrastinating about.
Yeah.
So even just one little verbal step toward it, that's a positive thing. Remembering impermanence, taking even just a half step and being satisfied with that half step. Don't be mad at yourself for a half step because you're a half step closer to actually doing it, right? And then the other part for me is to address the practicalities. It could very well be that thing we're procrastinating is something we don't need to do. Okay? And we can actually choose to do something different than that thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But it really comes down to recognizing that we have potential, that we have a lot of good potential within us, and that we can make a change. Because look at all the changes we've already made in our lives. We've actually already made a lot of healthy choices. I mean, okay, we've made a lot of mistakes, but we've also made a lot of healthy choices and made a lot of good choices, and we should dwell on that and say, just like I was able to take action on that situation, I can take action here. But I'm not sure this is addressing your question. What do you think is missing? Maybe I didn't understand.
No, I think you addressed it, actually.
Okay. Yep. The practical part is like, I had a lady tell me that She knew that exercise was good for her, but she just couldn't get herself to do it. Okay?
Yeah.
So I encouraged her to do the half measure, that every time she said, I can't do it, oh, I love to exercise, but I'm too busy, that I told her, do something with your body right then. You know, even if it's just, pounding your feet on the floor for a minute or waving your arms for a minute, and, or doing laps in your house for a minute, and then at least you've done something. And you're not just sitting there and feeling bad about not doing anything. And I tell people the same thing with practice. Like a lot of people say, oh, I can't do my sitting meditation practice, or I can't do my mantra meditation practice. I said, when you start feeling bad about it, just say a mantra to yourself, like the compassion mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum. So then you just did it anyway. You see what I'm saying? It's like, oh, I can't do my mantra practice. Well then, Om Mani Padme Hum, you just did some. You see what I'm saying? I mean, this is why accepting partial steps is good, because partial steps will lead someplace. Because,
sometimes when I've done that before, the partial steps, but now I don't think it's good enough. I'll beat myself up.
I get you. So, yeah, I get you. Well, then what you do for that, because I have that problem, and Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche somehow magically knew that was my problem. So in a teaching one time, he said, if you make a mistake, you might think, you might beat yourself up or feel bad about it. He said, instead of doing that, make an aspiration. Speak an aspiration. You can say, well, it's not perfect, but it's good, and I'm going to do more of it. It's like, you see what I'm saying? It's like, may I do more tomorrow? Okay, this is as far as I go today, but may I do more tomorrow? Rather than going down that rabbit hole, of self-recrimination and so forth. One of my buddies, Eric Weinberg, he gives Dharma talks here. He has a saying, he says, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. So by holding out for being perfect, then you miss the opportunity to do something good. See, and so then he said, if you make a mistake, just say, may my mistake, contain the mistakes of all beings, and by my going through this mistake, may everybody else be free of mistakes. May we all be free of mistakes. Make some kind of aspiration, like, okay, I didn't do it today, but you know what? May I do it tomorrow? May this get better for me. Rather than just going down. You can kind of see there's like going down and then there's going up. Yeah. So we learn stuff a little bit by little bit. So I appreciate you bringing that.
Thank you.
Okay, no, thanks for asking. Yeah, thanks. This is good, man. I see you led somebody else. See, look at that.
I kind of just wanted to ask, when the problem is making an important decision that is unclear what the proper solution is. That's kind of something.
Unclear what
the proper solution is for you.
Right.
Right now I'm kind of dealing with something. I'll go ahead and just give a little context. I'm a junior in college. I just finished basketball season.
Sure.
And I have one more season left. And I'm trying to decide if I want to play or not. I've always loved basketball my whole life. I've played since I was, a 4-year-old all the way to college. And I've had 3 good seasons. But the head coach is just kind of hateful. And I know that kind of stems from his own suffering. And
I get it.
I've learned a lot about myself. And the situation has kind of brought me to Buddhism to kind of, find happiness within and not depend on the game or other people's emotions to defy your own emotions.
I get it.
But it kind of got to the point last season where it's really difficult to enjoy the game like I want to. So do you have any advice for kind of navigating through different thoughts of like, oh, I might regret if I don't play. I might regret if I do play.
I get you.
So sorry, I rambled on, but.
No, actually, the context you give is really important, and I really appreciate it because I feel like whether the problem's about, what the choice of what activity to engage in, or a career choice, perhaps, we all go through this. The things you're talking about, we all go through this. And that's why I made the joke about analysis paralysis that my buddy talked to me about. And so we all get there. But look at what I'll say first of all is that I think you sort of already know based on the way you've told the story. See, here's the thing. I'm not a therapist. I've been in therapy for more than 10 years, and I believe in it, but I'm not a therapist, and so I don't practice that. But I was a writer. I was a professional journalist for 15 years. And I can hear narratives, I can hear themes in people's narratives, and that gives me a clue sometime as to what Dharma to bring to bear on the question. And I think that since this is not a career choice, it's an activity choice, right? Because you're not thinking of playing professionally, right? Am I right? Okay. So then it's just an activity choice rather than a career choice. Whew, that takes a lot of pressure off, right? It takes a lot of pressure off. And so when I was in college, one of my professors gave me an exercise to do when I was facing a decision. And it was literally a paper and pencil exercise. Write the benefits and the detriments, the pros and the cons. The things that argue in favor of it, the things that argue against it. And he said, once you've made the list, he said, your path will become clearer. So you can start with some kind of pragmatic exercise. But here, the other part of it is that hearing you talk about the relationship with the leader of the team, and kind of like how hard it's been to deal with that. And I always tell people that we are not Buddhas right now. Because we're not Buddhas right now, we're going to have a limit to how much we can take of anything, okay? We got a limit right now to how much we can take. And when we're starting to resent the other person, that's like a real clear signal that something is wrong and we need to back up and to reassess, okay? At least reassess, if not outright make a change. Because this was something that my teacher, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, said in response to a woman whose brother was continuously asking her for money, but then was using the money to buy alcohol and get drunk. And she said, I just can't give him money, but he's my brother, and I feel bad if I don't. And it's like, in your situation, you may feel bad that you're not a counterbalance to this person with the other team people, because this is something that you've kind of lived through and survived, and so you kind of like to help the other people, but at what cost to yourself, and that's where you have to make that decision. You sort of know, and the resentment that you feel against the other person can be very corrosive. It's like putting acid on something. It just corrodes it away. And so I feel like part of you knows that already, and that's kind of, in the way you told the story, it's like, there's something there about that person, and you don't have to do that. Now you can do alternative things, because there, I'm sure, are many ways to continue your sport in a different way. Playing small tournaments and, with the
coaching, things like that.
Coaching, 3-on-3. I mean, just whatever you choose to do, and just do your sport in a way that is enjoyable for you. And of course, you've already read Sacred Hoops, right? Yeah. Okay. Yep. See, anybody who any b-ball person has got to read Sacred Hoops. Yeah. Because I've even forgotten. Oh, Phil. What was his name? Anyway, the guy who wrote it, he was the coach of the Lakers, right?
It was, I'm blanking up here now.
I forget, anyway, okay.
Yeah.
Anyhow, but that's a great book that talks to you about healthy ways to be in the sport. And whether it's about basketball or anything else, it's a healthy way to be in a sport, which I think is really useful.
Yeah.
And if you can carry that to another generation of players, that's a powerful thing.
Definitely, yep. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Okay, no, thank you for asking. Yeah. Okay. Well, there's time for one more, so this will be the last one. Yes. Hi.
So this relates to your saying you said earlier, live in the problem, not in the solution.
Yeah. Right.
My question is the reason that people live in their problem because it's more familiar to them. It's comfortable.
Yeah.
I read a children book a few years ago where she talked about that. It's like,
Yeah.
we'd rather live in the problem
Yeah.
and suffer because at least we're familiar with that versus some change. And then it's also, when you look at like human biology things, we like patterns, we like routines. We don't like to get away from that.
Yeah, I've thought that about my own situation sometimes, when I've lived in my problems. Sometimes there's a little fear there about who would I be if I didn't have that problem, right? And I would have to do something I don't want to do or make a change I don't want to make. And I think that's I think for me what kept me out of making a decision or making a change. And I do think that sometimes we get familiar, even if it's painful, where we prefer the familiar to the unfamiliar and the scariness of something we don't know, going into an unknown. And I do think that happens. And this is where I think the Bodhisattva commitment also helps. Because remember the saying that I gave, which is, may everything I do today benefit beings in some way, and may we all become Buddhas. Because when we start living our life as this transformational act of just, seeing what we do, doing something different, and making that the way we live our life, then the so-called wins and losses, they don't bother us as much. We don't get as excited by the wins, and we don't get as deflated by the losses. So going into unknown territory is easier when you're not that invested in the outcome. You see what I'm saying? You don't like hang, by your fingernails on the solution. And you realize that in the large scheme of things, what you do here or there may or may not be important, but if your intention is to always be of benefit, you're going to be of benefit wherever you go and whatever you do. It's like the other questioner. You're going to be of benefit wherever, because you have the attitude you want to help the next generation of players. So it's like you want to, I met a guy once and he was learning how to be an entertainer, and he was learning from this guy, and the guy was just awful. I mean, he was a good entertainer, but he was a mean man. And this guy said to me, now I know what I don't want to be. And that's something right there. I know what I don't want to be and what I don't want to do, and that's valuable information. And I think that, I don't want to be stuck. I want to be someplace other than stuck. So, like Buddha, help me. Let's get going here. So
Yeah.
I appreciate the. Yeah. Did I miss any part of the question, or did that kind of handle?
Yep.
Okay, I really appreciate you asking.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, because whenever anybody asks a question, I always say that you're asking my teacher to teach. You know what I'm saying? There's something called the 7-branch prayer, and one of them is asking the Buddhas to teach. Now, I'm not a Buddha, I don't play one on TV, but my teacher, I really feel that Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche was a Buddha. I really feel that he was, and so the teachings he gave, I love to repeat, because they provide great value to people. And so whenever people ask me questions, it's like, he taught me that there's no such thing as a silly question. No such thing. Because if one person asks, there's 2 other people who are sitting and thinking of a similar situation, and they want to talk about it too. So I held you over a little bit today, so I'm sorry about that, but I appreciate this, and I hope that this gives you some skills so that you can live in the answer. And even if you don't know what to do, if you just say to yourself, I don't want to live in this problem, I want to live in the answer, even if the answer doesn't come to you right away, at least making that statement is a step in the right direction. Yeah. That and the other, I'm going to make a joke now. It's like, that and go see some good theater, if you can. Anyway, or listen to some music that makes you feel inspired, And just be out there and be engaged and benefit beings. So because of time, we'll just recite the dedication in English the one time through. It starts with the words, by this merit. So we gather together all the goodness and dedicate it to others. By this merit, may all attain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. The courageous Manjushri, who knows everything as it is, Samantabhadra, who also knows in the same way, and all the bodhisattvas that I may follow in their path, I completely dedicate all this virtue. Okay, thanks everyone. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Enjoy the sunshine. We need a little sunshine in our life, right? I know me, it's just like, give me more, please. Thank you to the sound department and for everyone at home joining on YouTube and Facebook. Thank you.